You're listening to Second Cut. This is the weekly podcast from the Film Magazine, where we explore topics in film criticism and theory through movie reviews. Except this week, where we're not doing that. I'm Jacob, and I'm the one who's pushing buttons and they aren't working.
I'm Sam. I'm the one who's the only person who's produced the top 10 list that's not chronological. Thanks, guys.
And I'm Kieran. I'm the one that has looked at it again and gone, I made some choices here.
Yeah, there were a lot of difficult choices within this. So we made our top 10 best films of all time lists. Sort of the opposite of bins, I guess there.
I was going to say, are we talking about it, like put it in the scrap or in the kind of like old school film editing term bins, where that's how they used to store all the footage, and which is why it's now in folders. They are called bins on things like Avid.
Yeah, but no one uses it like that, do they? I mean, even cinephiles, I think, would only use that as a push, really.
Yeah, I only know it in terms of British trash cans. So, yeah, we have our top 10 lists, and before we dive fully into those, I guess we should probably introduce ourselves, because we are new.
Yeah, this is the soft reboot of the franchise.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is our Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle, or whatever. What's the first one called?
Halloween 2018, our Scream 2022.
Yeah.
Yep. So this is literally Second Cut 2023.
All right, so I'm Jacob. I'm the one who knows how to push buttons, but sometimes they don't work.
You've literally just repeated your intro. Is that because it's a soft reboot?
Yes.
Yeah, and I don't think it's on this first live stream we quite got the first intro, so we're trying again.
And who are you?
I'm Sam. I think, as I've already said, yes, my list is not in chronological order, unlike these two guys. So mine will be weighting the relative value of some very different films. So I'll probably have to justify that a bit more than these other two.
I love how this is just repeating our intros rather than introducing ourselves properly.
Oh, we said Jacob, we said Sam.
Yeah, you know what? I guess we did say that in the intros, but we all write for the filmmagazine.com. That is how we got together. And we had been doing mixed review films, and now we just do like weekly themes or read articles that we wrote because we're lazy.
I'm certainly definitely lazy. Very much, and I guess doing it this way will mean that we don't have to watch one every week, and sometimes it can be we come up with a different film that we've seen in the past, stuff like that. But I guess I'm Kieran. I'm the one that will probably go on a rant or two as we go along. That's my job. That's my function. I am a function. I'm not a person.
Yeah. If people haven't listened to us before when we're in audio form only, I suppose we all fulfill a definite role on the podcast, don't we?
Oh God, so Kieran has the South Korean demon again.
Yeah.
Kieran is the ranter who occasionally his internet gets possessed by some malevolent entity.
I was going to say it's only here. Because I've moved location, I think it must be where I am. So occasionally my ranting is so powerful for my camera where I am that I have to physically turn it off to save it. So I am still here, but I'm going back to our audio podcast roots instead of live video. Thank God you don't have to see my face.
He just doesn't want to see now the demon's taken over him.
I think it's some kind of postmodern Medusa kind of thing.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get in to these top 10 lists. And, I kind of want to know how you guys got to your lists. What were your parameters and what are some things that you left off that you wish you could have squeezed in?
I mean, we should probably start by saying that this was for the film magazine. I guess this list will be going up at some point in the future. But we were also tasked with making two lists. One was the top 10 best films of all time. One was our top 15 favorite films of all time, which are slightly different.
Slightly.
And actually Looking at my list, only 5 films are on both. So there are many films on the best films of all time that aren't my particular favorites, and some of my favorites aren't on the best
Yeah.
films of all time. And
Yeah.
actually,
I
thinking
think
back to,
I think I've got
no,
3 on both. There's a lot of crossover in terms of directors. So some I would say kind of are kind of more kind of not necessarily claims, but probably more kind of significant films. But there are other films of theirs that I prefer. So that's kind of different for me. I mean, the way I describe my list, basically, it's kind of when you love films like we do, it's impossible to just narrow it down to 10. Really, it's like you ask you on one day, it could be a completely different list to if you're asked on a different day. I mean, one of the worst possible questions that you can ask a cinephile is what's your favorite film, because as soon as anyone on the street asks you that, you instantly forget every film that's ever been made.
Absolutely.
well, thankfully, about a year and a half ago when we started Second Cut, and it was just me and Jacob for a while, we had our episode 0, which is top 5 favorite films. And thanks to that top 5, I've just kept that. And if anyone ever goes, "What's your top 5 favorite films?" I go, "I can tell you." And I've just had that memorized in my head. So thankfully, after that, I've been good. But the one I had about a year ago, I was working in high school as a supply teacher, and somebody goes, quote some movies at me. Every movie quote in the entire universe disappeared from my head. And it was just like, I was there for about 5 minutes going, I've got nothing. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't remember my favorite film list at all. So for my best, what I basically tried to do was track the course of Western film history. Although I did include an Akira Kurosawa film. But like he's kind of Western, he loved John Ford. Very influential in American filmmaking. And probably European as well. But, it's just impossible to get away from American cinema when you're talking about impactful movies, just because they have saturated the market so much in Hollywood.
Yeah.
I mean, they've saturated our idea of the market because we are not, we are Anglo-centric, however you put it, and therefore that's what we're going to be most open to. I'm sure if you lived in Hong Kong, yes, you know quite a few kind of Western movies, but you're probably going to have an awful lot more knowledge of that local cinema as well. And it's even like stuff like the Emmys. I realized that it was purely American produced TV that got nominated for Emmys. Because I thought it was like, a British show must have been something like Doctor Who at some point, and then realized that for most of its life couldn't be nominated. Not that it wasn't good enough, but that it just wasn't have an American production. So stuff like this, we are, very much exposed to the kind of English-speaking, English language films and stuff, which is going to skew our lists to a certain point. So we do have to make accommodations for that, and so we apologize.
Now, I do have a Danish film that can be in any language you want because of subtitles, so that's pretty sweet.
I describe my list as a combination of groundbreaking, timeless, and personally impactful films, basically. So, things that particularly speak to me, have had an impact on me in my life, and things that did kind of new things at the time, and particularly significant in the era they were made. I've kind of there's some of these are my favorite, or they're related to my favorite films, and then some are just you just can't ignore, because they're just so important, in the cinematic landscape.
Yeah. And with my list, I again have I've at least put them in chronological order for when the list eventually comes up. But I put caveats that obviously, some of my favorites aren't the best, and some of the best aren't my favorites. I haven't seen every film in existence. So things like, on Kaye and Places in Empire and Sight and Sound, Tokyo Story would probably be in the top 10 for most people's list. And it's like, I just haven't seen Tokyo Story. That's just something I haven't got around to yet. I'm not saying it's not the best. I can only, list what I've seen. But then my thing was that to quote it, they are at the peak of cinematic mastery. The ones I've selected, they span nearly the length of cinema's existence, and are deliberately chosen to reflect a wide range of genres, countries, and time. So I deliberately made sure to, try and go out at least once or twice out of the English language, out of kind of feature-length films and stuff like that. So as I said, otherwise 80% of the list would just be like 80s horror movies.
Yeah, mine would have been all
this is
crime
not the
movies.
Yeah, yours would just be like everybody with an Italian American accent. It would just be Scorsese and Coppola with a few others thrown in.
Yep. One or two Kubrick and Godard, and that's it.
That's a few. So
Another thing, Kieran, we can kind of use this as a transition into your first movie, but I had a feature length limit. So my example of one I did not include was The Arrival of a Train, a 50-second documentary about a train. Which was not the first Lumiere film screened, by the way, although it is popularly thought that it is.
So I think the first one, when the Lumiere brothers premiered it's the Kinematograph, isn't it? At the 1895 December World Fair, they had, I think, a selection of 10 films, and we think, as far as I can work out, as far as scholars can work out, the train arriving at a station premiered the month after. So it was not in that selection of 10. I think the workers leaving a factory or whatever is in there. What the others are, we don't know. But the train arriving at the station is not in there. And I have one or two non-feature length films in there, purely because having done a module with at university where one of my lecturers ran at the time the experimental section at Edinburgh, and I think was very involved in Rotterdam Film Festival as well. If anything, doing that module made me appreciate how very much kind of feature-length narrative fiction focused I was, and it's kind of through that I made a deliberate effort every time I do these lists to try not to be so feature film Hollywood centric. So although a lot of it is, because that's just my upbringing and what I'm aware of, I try to throw one or two others into the mix and try and get as a broader palette as I can, whilst still staying true to my kind of personal opinionated roots.
Well, Kieran, using what you just said, tell us what your first/10th film is.
It's not ranked. It's not ranked. I just put them chronologically because it made it easier for the article when it goes up.
Well, so and for me, I couldn't possibly decide. Like it is impossible for me to make this a 1 through 10 best to 10th best. Like no.
Yeah.
You two just didn't try hard enough.
No, we're
didn't search your souls.
We're lazy. Sorry.
We're too indecisive.
Yeah, they're almost as bad as John Carpenter when he was asked for his top 10 favorite films. About 4 of them were John Ford.
All right, disembodied voice, go.
All right.
I should probably let's see if my camera. Yes, my camera is operational for about 30 seconds whilst I speak. So no, it's dying. This is going to be interesting, isn't it? I'm gonna have to work out a different setup for this. Somewhere else. Anyway, my first pick is all the way from 1902, and it is Le Voyage dans la Lune. I'm going to butcher the French, or A Trip to the Moon, as most people know it. The Georges Méliès 15-minute silent film, which is kind of an adaptation of the Jules Verne novels From the Earth, the Moon, and Around the Sun, with a little bit of Wells' First Man on the Moon on there. And it is in some ways groundbreaking. And I mean, if you go and see Hugo by Martin Scorsese, which is just literally Georges Méliès tribute act, that's all it is. It is kind of the first real science fiction film, if you want to say, the first kind of genre film, if you want to say it like that. Méliès was essentially a stage magician who was experimenting with film and those things, because they were originally carnival attractions. And so he was experimenting with that, and he's kind of considered the godfather of special effects and camera tricks and things like that. So he combined these kind of stage illusions with a little bit of camera tricks, and he's adding in splashes of color. And it's got that iconic shot, I think, of one of the most iconic shots that people don't realize is iconic: the rocket going into the moon, the face of the moon, which is one of those things that you go, that's not like actually came from a film, because it's just, I think, one of those images that everyone knows without realizing they know, in a weird way. And it's really fun. It's got a great some new scores of the restoration work that's gone on, and I thought at the end that even though there's not a single cast or crew member or anyone that had anything to do with that film, it's originally alive today, it's still here and we're still enjoying it, and it's still very influential, and one of the ones that kind of also pushed the length, I think, because before then they were like 4 or 5 minutes. This was 15 minutes. This was fairly groundbreaking at the time, and also it's silent, and otherwise I probably wouldn't have put a silent film on there, unless we're going to go Birth of a Nation, which is problematic at best. So yeah, my first one was A Trip to the Moon.
Yeah, the Birth of a Nation was, because it's so influential, but like, it's so terrible, and I could not justify including it in a best list, even as groundbreaking as it was. Sam,
it's one of those ones you have to include with a caveat.
Yeah, vaguely kind of fascinating as like a technical kind of demonstration of kind of what could be done in cinema, but yeah, just too morally reprehensible to give it the time of day.
Sam, did you want to start with your number 10, or did you have a silent film to keep with that theme?
I did not have a silent film. I think my earliest
not a real
film
cinephile
on my list.
I was going to say, you're not a real cinephile if you're not putting in cave paintings, so we're all...
Yes, so I'm going to stick to the order I've put my list in, but I will say my earliest film was from 1939 on my list. So, yes.
It's one of the Nazi films.
Yeah, so the first film on my list, so you say I'm going to go in the order I've put them in. My number 10 was Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse from 2018.
I still haven't seen it, I'm sorry. But as we know with me, if it's not 30 years old, I haven't seen it.
In fact, I only saw Trip to the Moon a couple of weeks ago for the first time. So,
oof, I had to do it in first year at university.
Yeah,
you could stop watching us on YouTube and go watch it right now.
although I feel, and you don't even have to go to load up anything different. Just open up a different tab in YouTube, and it's right there for you.
Yep.
So I went for Spider-Verse. So basically, I had to have this on just to kind of represent two of my main loves of films. Basically, I love animation and I love superhero movies, and Spider-Verse is one of the finest examples of both from the last decade or so. It always winds me up. People who don't consider animation as true cinema, that it's like disposable, that it's inferior somehow, that it's just for kids, and it's just such a. I mean, it goes back at least as far, if not further, really further than cinema itself, because obviously you had like think of like flip books and stuff. You think of like rapidly moving images. It's just drawn images. And zoetrope, stuff like that. It's really
kinematographs.
Like live action cinema, yeah. So, but it just allows you as a medium beyond any other really to literally anything you can imagine. There's no limit to what you can actually depict on screen, and in kind of a particularly vivid and kind of memorable way. And this was it killed me a bit not to have like a Studio Ghibli or a Leica or a Pixar film on this list. But this is my kind of standard kind of animation, because I actually think it's the most interesting and significant and important one from the last few years. And I love the art style. It's been very influential since, like dipping into like comic book art and kind of printing kind of impressions and stuff, and kind of mixing that into your animation. Different kind of frame rates for different characters, and referencing kind of how you make a comic book basically in like your visuals, turning it into gags and things, and there's like various references to how like old Marvel comics were put together, and like the different things that were kind of showed kind of action lines, sound clouds and stuff like that. It's and it's just a really exciting kind of superhero movie with a good message. Anyone can be Spider-Man. You can achieve whatever you want to achieve if you believe in yourself. And that's a good message. So
I am Spider-Man. I am
Yeah.
Spider-Man.
I'm not. It's again one of the rare occasions as well where the Academy got it right and gave this the best animated feature win that year, because they normally go for something far less interesting and more kind of digestible. You know, just very very shiny, pristine kind of CG animation. Whereas this is CG, but it's definitely more interesting, more unusual. So yeah, that's why I went for Spider-Verse.
Nice. I left off an animated film. I mean, I think Spider-Verse or a Ghibli film would be a good one to go to, but I just don't rank any of those high enough in my personal idea of the best films. And I just personally don't like any Studio Ghibli films. I've tried. Can't get into it.
What?
We can discuss that later, Kieran.
You have no heart. You have no heart.
I'd like to point out, just double checking, that 15 of the Oscars for Best Animated Feature have gone to Disney movies. 15.
Yeah.
So they've been going since 2001.
Yeah, they don't generally like stop motion or anything that's not like high budget
I think
CG.
Pinocchio only got it because it's Del Toro and people are trying to fit.
Yeah.
Okay, Jake, what is yours?
My 10 was a silent film, The Passion of Joan of Arc, and I included it because I wanted people to watch a silent film. You know, in theory, you're going to these lists and going, okay, how do I get more into movies? And so, personally, I think it's a great starting point for silent film, although it did take place kind of at the peak. That and Metropolis are sort of the apex of the silent film art form, both coming in like right on the verge of sound. Between this and Nosferatu, I haven't seen all of Nosferatu, so that's why I didn't include it. I'd stopped halfway through, and
You stop.
yes, I mean it just because I was going to sleep or something, and then I never went back to it. So
Who puts on a silent film when they're going to sleep?
it wasn't because I was going to sleep. I just had it on before bed and got tired. So I picked The Passion of Joan of Arc because I did finish it, and it's also really good. Like, so what Dreyer did was he brought together all of the sort of techniques that had been crafted in European cinema throughout the last, 20 years, going back to Méliès, and bringing in the Soviet editing styles and the French Impressionist styles. And he made a historical film based on the records of Joan of Arc's trial for heresy. And the story is really told through Joan's face. The actor Renée Jean Falconetti, I'm not saying that Frenchly, her face is the star of the show. Like that is the image that you're going to see whenever you Google this film, go to Google Images, it's her crying. And it's just such a passionate performance that I'm pretty sure in a Kubrick-esque fashion, it was sort of abused out of her. It was not great treatment that she was receiving. But, we'll probably discuss it later. The fact that mistreatment sometimes does lead to amazing art. And so in spite of that, I think because of what it achieved cinematically, its place at the end of the silent era, I decided to put it on my list instead of like a Buster Keaton movie, because I like watching those gags, but I'll watch them in sort of isolation and outside the context of the film. I'll just go watch the YouTube clips of this bit or that bit. And
Buster Keaton's best falls.
Yeah. Best stunts. So Joan of Arc is just, it's so engrossing. It's an interesting story, and for me it seems like a movie that could be just as easily a sound film as a silent film.
Yeah,
it's so well acted and evocative.
Yeah. Okay, are we going around the table properly?
We can, or we can reverse it.
Yep. Well, let me grab one in before my camera messes up again.
Good idea.
And I'll try and make this one quicker because otherwise I'm going to be here all day. So the next one on my list, still in black and white. I went for Psycho. And it's you could put almost any Hitchcock on the list somewhere. I say almost, and it
I did.
yeah, most people would put Vertigo on there. And actually, in my favorite films, I slightly prefer North by Northwest, just because I just find it more fun to watch.
Do your
Because North by
impression. Do
Northwest
your
is.
impression.
I'm not doing my Jimmy Stewart impression. It'll come off really badly. Um, I could do my Marion Crane impression, just in Psycho, but yeah, Psycho. What more really needs to be said about Psycho? It's one of those ones that not everyone will put on the list, but I think if you watch films enough, my camera dies, and you'd probably. Yeah, Psycho's one of those ones where if it goes on the list, people go, yeah, that's fair enough, even if you're not going to put it on there, because it's just one of those films that's kind of you might not put it on, but there's no argument against it being on a top 10 list, if
No,
that makes sense.
no,
It's just
no one's going to object to it, are
it's again still has some of the one of the greatest scenes ever crafted, one of the most iconic scores ever crafted. Hitchcock had to go on there somewhere, as much as it starts getting to straight white male syndrome, in terms of auteurs and everything like that. But what I love about Hitch is his just efficiency. If a film needs one shot for a scene, it'll be one shot. If it needs 50 shots, it'll be 50 shots. His entire thing was purely and simply kind of how do I tell this story most effectively? And that was his goal, to keep people, in there and entertained. And away from academic criticism. And always my favorite response of his to academic criticism in general, as my final anecdote for Kubrick, is that there was, I think Roger Ebert, an interview somewhere, kind of panel, said to Hitchcock, he was doing like a talk and there were questions, and Ebert goes, "I've got a correspondent who's doing." At college doing a paper on the uses of staircases in the work of Hitchcock. And as I'm talking to Hitchcock, I thought what you'd say to that and academic criticism in general. And he turns around and goes, "Well, I think staircases are made to go up and down, and therefore are very photogenic." And that's it. There's no. It's great for getting into films, and there's no kind of yes, people have kind of analyzed it, and there obviously is some stuff in there, but it's just he made a film because it was interesting and kept people entertained. And Psycho is one of those which is just stood the test of time. It's still as impactful 63 years later as it was then. That's my short one.
Nice. Sam?
My next one on my list is The Wizard of Oz from 1939. And it's basically it was a Titanic kind of cultural kind of influence, which I think a lot of people forget sometimes. People think back, think it was very quaint and kind of cuddly, kind of Sunday afternoon kind of film, but really it's again, two things I love. I love musical films. I love fantasy films. I think this just had such like a large influence on both of them. The way they're staged, the way they're mounted. I mean, just not just how a musical film works. How the set piece, how all the the musical numbers are put together and choreographed. But to got all the fantasy films, even down to like Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings, you look at how he films like an army marching past like a fantasy castle, and then it's here in 1939. It's when the witch's minions are marching up and down outside her castle, and just the way these kind of fantasy lands are kind of imagined, and how and back then obviously like the only way to do it was you had to build up the whole thing for real, or have a semi-convincing matte painting, in the background. It's the only way that could be done. And again, doing stuff for real. Just I think of Margaret Hamilton, playing the Wicked Witch. How seriously burned she was. When like a fire kind of thing went wrong. Like the witch appears in a fireball, and apparently she had to go down for a trapdoor, and something went wrong, something was mistimed, and she got quite severely burned. It's like people don't generally have to put themselves through that kind of physical abuse if they're out these days. There's more safety demands generally. But yeah, it's just and this is also like probably one of the earlier films which is kind of arrives at that. It's considered now cliche, like it was all a dream kind of story, But then, not only that, it was all a dream, or was it? That's that comes up like so much, like so many different kinds of films these days. And I don't think there were many kind of stories on kind of film stories before this that kind of had that, and I think it probably popularized it. And if it didn't have this, then people would still be doing that kind of a story kind of structure, like over a century on.
Does the James Franco movie confirm it wasn't a dream?
The James Franco movie. It's like let's just drain all the magic out of this. Let's just over-explain everything that doesn't need to be explained. It's like, why can't evil people just be evil? Do they all have to have a traumatic backstory? Did the Wicked Witch need to be a woman scorns? No. Anyway, yeah. For me, this is magical. It's really influential, and I always love going back to it. So yeah, it's a stunning film.
I almost put it on mine, but occupying the spot where it would be chronologically instead is Seven Samurai from Akira Kurosawa.
Woo!
It is probably the easiest 3-hour movie you'll ever watch. It's incredibly well paced, and it's really engaging with the characters, the way they all come together, and then their dynamics once they are together. Sam, you wrote a little bit about Toshiro Mifune and Akira Kurosawa's relationship. Can you tell us a little insight that you learned about this movie from that?
Well, basically, Kurosawa, he admired Mifune for what he could do, like for his presence, and that he acted like no other actor he'd ever met. He's almost had like an animalistic kind of personality and energy to him, but he couldn't really control him. I mean, Kurosawa was a stickler for detail, and he liked everything just so, but he quickly realized, I can't really do it with this guy. He's just not going to listen to me. So he basically just kind of constructed scenes around him, points him in the general right direction, just hoped it would all kind of work out.
Yeah, so for Seven Samurai, I love Rashomon. I like Yojimbo and its spawn of adaptations and readaptations and all that. But Seven Samurai is so influential. Like, not only does it have a direct Western adaptation and then a remake of that, but beyond Leone, George Lucas was borrowing from this film, as well as Hidden Fortress. A Bug's Life is based off this movie. You watch any team up or heist film, and like really the core of what is in that story is coming from Seven Samurai.
It also kind of crops up in Wolves of the Kala, the fifth Dark Tower book by Stephen King,
which I'm reading at the moment. No spoilers. I'm only halfway through.
Okay, well, even halfway through, you'll have worked out, and I think he references in about 100 pages time for you. They work out that they're literally reenacting the Magnificent Seven, which is the remake of Seven Samurai. And that one's where he starts to go really meta, Sam. You'll have fun. More meta than he has been already.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, even there, it crops up. Seven Samurai is just one of those ones that I think kind of subconsciously is in our kind of psyches and without us really knowing. And I think that's one of the marks of a great film.
Yeah, and also it's a landmark of culture exchange between the East and West. Kurosawa was influenced by John Ford and other Hollywood directors, and then Hollywood directors and other Western filmmakers started borrowing from him, and so it's a great example of cultural exchange and just a really good movie. You can't talk about cinema without talking about Seven Samurai, except in y'all's two's list, apparently.
Yeah, and I think if anyone wants to learn how to pan a camera, you watch a Kurosawa movie. Nobody pans a camera like Kurosawa. If we're going back to me, talking about nobody handles a camera like somebody, let's take him off the list. At number 3, I've got Mr. Stanley Kubrick with 2001: A Space Odyssey, which is, I will say, a different Kubrick film to my favorites, which is The Shining. I think in my favorite list I've got 2001 on there anyway, but it's not my favorite Kubrick. It's
So
second.
it's reversed for me. I prefer 2001, but spoiler, I put The Shining on my list. So
Yeah, I think like the Shining is one of my favorite movies of all time. I've seen it, you know, at least a dozen times, if not over like 20 odd by now. It's one of those that I've seen. It's one of the ones that got me into cinema. But I think 2001 just takes it in terms of. I think the thing with The Shining is that it's influential in the fact that it's kind of been referenced in so many places. You know, Toy Story. You know, the
Barbie.
music is Barbie. Well, no, this is there is a Shining reference in Barbie.
Oh, so
The
I
opening
meant 2001. The intro is.
Yeah, I'm talking about Shining. I think The Shining is in terms of almost like cinema meme culture in terms of referencing. Even is it Passengers with Jennifer Lawrence and Chris Pratt? I think it was. The bar that they have there on the ship is the bar from The Shining. And I think there's a bathroom in some other film that I've seen recently, which is off The Shining as well.
So why is 2001 on your list instead of The Shining, Kieran?
Because I think
The Shining.
Because I think that 2001 has influenced cinema kind of stylistically, slightly more subtly. It's had a more profound impact on cinema rather than the kind of almost meme reference level. What it did, how it kind of structured the film, how it was really, let's be honest, nobody would have thought, yeah, for our first 30 minutes of the film, let's have no dialogue. What? You know, it is in that way fairly groundbreaking. And I think a couple of years before he passed, I heard an anecdote saying that Spielberg was talking to Kubrick, because obviously they were very good friends in the last couple of decades of Kubrick's life. And he was going around going, I want to change the form of cinema. I want to change it up. And Spielberg was like, didn't you do that with 2001? And he goes, a little bit, but not much. And it's like, really? You know, it 2001, even by kind of big, Hollywood standards, is regarded as fairly experimental, even by this.
Outside of Tarkovsky, who thinks it's hackish.
Yeah. Realistically, you have a choice. It's Space Odyssey or Solaris. Yeah, and it's just big and overpowering. It's one of those ones you get the biggest screen possible, the biggest sound system, and you just sink into it. You know, it's one of those ones that consumes you as you go on. You go back to it over and over and over, and it just gets into your soul, and it pushes everything to the absolute limits that it could do. And realistically, science fiction has never been the same again. You know, it used to be the little kind of aliens in rubber suits. Still is a lot of the time. Looking at you, Doctor Who, and Star Trek for a bit. But, like, nobody had done science fiction on such a big, expansive, polished scale before. And it kind of just went to genre cinema, and all of us little kind of, the people that would, nerds essentially, we can do Hollywood for you. And I think I've got my quote here, is cinematic transcendentalism. It just goes beyond, and I think that's kind of what I think just notches it from The Shining.
Nice. Sam.
I will admit it's not everyone's cup of tea, though. You have to have that caveat, but if you get into it,
I mean, it's one of those films like I've always appreciated rather than enjoyed. It feels too much like homework to me. As impressive as a lot of the sequences are.
Sam, you've got to have a Kubrick on there somewhere.
I don't actually.
Oof.
I can see.
I'm trying to find somewhere that all of us on our list have got something the same, and we haven't yet.
I can see Strangelove right behind you, so that also did not make mine, although I love it.
Yeah. I mean, if I was going to pick a Kubrick list film, it would be Strangelove for me. Then possibly The Shining shortly after. So my number 8 still. Connected to Shining, still vaguely horror adjacent. My number 8 is Silence of the Lambs. which I think is kind of one of the great kind of adaptations from page to screen. I think it's kind of unshowy about kind of a lot of decisions it makes. How to depict like these kind of vivid descriptions and a lot of this kind of horrific content. From the book. It uses the kind of language of cinema in some interesting ways, and the most gruesome kind of things in it are kind of the things that leaves to your imagination, because your imagination is a lot more powerful. Everyone talks about, obviously, Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter, and he's great. He's only in it for about 20 minutes. I think a bit less than that, actually. But he's still got the
16,
Oscar.
I think, is commonly quoted.
But really, it's all Jodie Foster. It's her film. She absolutely carries it, and one of the most interesting, I think, central protagonists in cinema is Clarice Starling. I think Jonathan Demme in general is a bit underrated as director. I don't think he was like a show-off kind of director. I think he was just really solid, really good, and just understood material, understood how to get flesh out some really interesting characters and work with his actors, and it's one of those films. I think whenever it comes on, I think you can't help but be drawn in, and that's this one that I've probably watched, if not the most. Now it's probably up there. I've seen it probably 15 times at least, I'd say, to various degrees. It always draws me in. I'm always discovering new things in it. I just absolutely get swept up in it. It's and surprise Oscar bait as well. You wouldn't think this was like a major awards contender, but it kind of swept the board. And for once, again, the Academy kind of seemed to get it right. This particularly.
It also gave us one of the best Oscar intros of all time, with the year it won, Billy Crystal being wheeled in the Hannibal Lecter mask, strapped to the gurney thing, and he goes off and goes to to Anthony Hopkins in the crowd, and so I'm thinking of having lunch. Would you care to join me having dinner or something like that? Which is, you just don't get that.
No.
All right, we're gonna go a little bit quicker here, especially for this one, because if you listen back to our older episodes, I've talked extensively about my number 8, Breathless. We did a whole episode on fake Breathless from the 80s, from the guy that made
True Breathless.
We talked about that too, but mainly it was about the stupid one, which the only reason to watch is shirtless Richard Gere and his pants. But the French New Wave was a really important, impactful movement in Western cinema. And if you want to know kind of what it was about, watch Breathless. Breathless has the weird editing, the jump cuts. That's what it's most known for. And basically, that was Godard, just sort of cutting things at random sometimes, but also he was inspired by Eisenstein. He goes, what are the most important images that I need? It's very much a Hitchcock thing too, where what do I need and what do I not need? And he just put exactly what he needed for any given scene. And then the scene where they're in the bedroom talking, that's uncut. There are cuts in it, but it's a much longer sequence. It's allowed to breathe. Jean-Paul Belmondo's Humphrey Bogart impression, just gives kind of a meta layer to the whole thing, where Godard himself is impersonating cinema in a way, putting out his ideas about cinema. And I think that Belmondo's character then becomes sort of a stand-in for Godard. And then on top of all that, there's the way that he marketed it and was taking the auteur ideas that he and Truffaut and the other writers that supported that theory, he was putting it into action with his own work, doing it his way. So I love Breathless, and it's probably not his most artistic film. He has some really crazy stuff, but it's simple and a good one to go to. And one that, guys like Scorsese and other American New Wave directors, they were going to watch that at their local theater and then going, I want to do that.
Yeah, it's like it's not one of the ones that I'll probably ever watch again. But when you have a whole artistic movement that film is the cornerstone
Yeah.
of, you can't really say that much about it, you know.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay,
I think I still resent it ever so slightly, just for kind of my kind of watching it in school, just as like an introduction to like film studies, But yeah, I
I
can't say
think
it's not.
there is a
I can't say it's not interesting. It's just not really my thing.
there's always a certain point where when you're forced to do study something, you hate it a little bit more. Um,
Yeah.
Anyway, are we moving on? Right, let's sweep through these a little bit quicker. This one is kind of one that if you know me was going to be on here, and yet as I put in the article, I considered actually not because I didn't think it was 100% perfect, and it's Blade Runner, and it's because there's several cuts of the film. There's a love scene which was inserted literally only to please the producers. The whole thing between Deckard and Rachel wasn't originally in there, and then Hampton Fancher gives them a slight kiss and goes, "There you go." Like, no, we want more. And so he sent back like multiple drafts, very slightly increasing like the love scene kind of nature of it, because he really didn't want it, and the producers like more, 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 and he's literally going right up until how much they would accept, and then that's it. And it's not 100% great. I'm not a massive fan of that, and there's a lot of times which is just floating around buildings, you know. And yet it is my favorite film ever, and I do think that there's just so much which is so influential. I mean, even William Gibson. I mean, as somebody that's now essentially doing a PhD, a lot of his PhD on cyberpunk fiction. William Gibson, who wrote Neuromancer, which is the cornerstone of now cyberpunk fiction, was reportedly about a third of the way through writing Neuromancer, and saw Blade Runner and went, "Oh my god, I can't do this. Everyone will just think I nicked my entire aesthetic off Blade Runner. Like I'm screwed." So it's like, I mean, the look of it, it's one of the best looking films ever made. I'm sorry, over 2049. I'm sorry. And the the entire thing, once you watch it a few times, it is an incredibly, for all its sci-fi and robots and laser guns and all that thing, and the neon, it's completely human. It is one of the most human films out there because it's literally just about somebody wanting life and coming up against death. That's the entire point. It's somebody's life running out, trying to find a way to live on, and that's something that everyone can relate to. And it culminates in what I think is the greatest monologue of all time, which is Batty's "Tears in Rain" speech right at the end, which I every time I watch it, I'll just YouTube just the clip, even though I've got it on DVD and the lot. Just there's something in there that was so perfectly capturing just all of human kind, I think, in one moment of just coming up against death and having to come to terms with my time is up. That's just there's no way I think that human kind of mortality will be summed up any better than that moment. So Blade Runner is just in there for that because it's in my very being at this point, and I don't think it'll ever go away, and I don't want it to.
Cool.
Nice.
That was Kieran being brief, everybody.
It's Blade Runner. What am I going to do?
Right, my next entry on the list. This is my Hitchcock, because he's got to be in there.
Yeah.
I've gone for Rear Window. For me, is by some distance is my favourite Hitchcock. I mean, don't know if you know this, but Hitchcock was really into voyeurism.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, and this is one of those films that really makes the most of the medium that film as a medium is about looking. It's about what you can see, what you can't see, what you're allowed to see, what you're not allowed to see, what you can surreptitiously see. It's that's basically what the whole film's about. But it's one of those where I think you kind of you notice something a bit new each time you see it. I mean, it's got this wonderful kind of studio sets, like the front's like an apartment block, and obviously you're seeing like glimpses through windows of these little, the lives of all these different characters kind of coming and going. And yeah, obviously like this very dark thing happens, and it's about like unreliable narrators, kind of, can you believe what you're seeing? Is there something else going on? And it's all in the characters' heads and everything like that. And the way the story folds out, I think it's still like really intriguing and thrilling, to this day. And and it looks great. It's very atmospheric. And I think it's just a great example of kind of what Hitchcock's so good at, just mounting like a really handsome story and just just drawing you in and keeping you kind of enraptured with it.
Nice. Oh yeah, I don't know how I didn't think of Rear Window. Actually, that might have made mine.
Have you got a Hitchcock on your list at all?
No, I don't. I was deciding between The Shining and Psycho for horror, and went with The Shining. But my next one is Bonnie and Clyde, and I can keep this quick. This one is personal impact for me. Anytime somebody says, "What does it look like where you live?" I say, "Go watch Bonnie and Clyde." That is how this part of Texas looks. Obviously, they were media darlings in their time, and so putting their sort of outlaw romance on screen is something that's going to be captivating. It's kind of similar to Breathless in that sense, but the big impact of... Sorry, Sam.
No, sorry. I was just sorry to interrupt you, Flo, but just got a quick shout out to my friend Greg, who's currently watching this stream on his big screen. So
oh God, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Oh, he's not going to see
Are you
much
glad
of you.
My camera isn't working?
Shout out Greg. Yeah, so the big impact for this film, of course, is the violence. There are many films that are considered the start of the American New Wave. You got The Graduate and other ones that I can't think of off the top of my head. But Bonnie and Clyde was the one that, like, threw production code violence rules out the window. Obviously, nobody was really following it by that point anyway, but they were the ones that really finally took it to the next level. So without that, we wouldn't have gems like Saw and Martyrs, because films would still have implied violence and, sort of psychic horror stuff, more so than, oh no, we're watching somebody get split open on screen and
someone
bloody.
say the world would be better for it.
It's possible. So that is my number 7, Bonnie and Clyde.
I say the world would be better for it, but let's be honest, we're all going to see Saw in the next few days. and you've gone on the violence. My next one, actually, I was conflicted about putting this on because it is an odd choice for saying one of the best films of all time. But I have gone for John Carpenter's The Thing. Same year as Blade Runner. I've actually done that twice in this list. Maybe 3 times. And again, it's an odd choice. It's definitely not going to get anywhere near like the Academy of thinking, oh, this is a great cinema. Nobody's going to think that's with a pipe in their mouth, kind of thing. And yet, like in it, there's more atmosphere. There's more tension than pretty much anything else. The special effects are almost flawless even today. MacReady is still one of the great kind of heroes of Western cinema. And when you think of Kurt Russell, you think of MacReady. I don't care. It's not Snake Plissken you're thinking of. You're thinking of MacReady. You think of him in that.
I think of those new Santa movies.
I am so sorry for you. I think I've got some like memory changes somewhere for Blade Runner that you can have if you want to get rid of that.
But if you think about it, even in those Santa films, he's MacReady, isn't he? It's the hair and the beard, isn't it?
Yeah. And like The Thing is one of the great, monsters of all time. The ending is so daring in the fact that nobody lives. Like, they live, but they're not living. It's just like, it's ridiculously nihilistic and it's so un-Hollywood, this film. And yet, it is still being talked about to this day. We're still having fan theories of, was one of them, an imitation or not. We're still having fan theories about the Molotov cocktail theory at the end, and people changing coats and who was what at any time. It's multiple genres. It's so well directed. It's so well acted, and it's still here, and it still packs a hell of a punch. And it's The Thing.
Yeah. All right. Next on my list, I love Guillermo del Toro, so I'd have one of his films on here. This isn't my favorite of his films. I think anyone who listens to my first episode on the regular podcast, I talk about my favorite of his is Hellboy 2: The Golden Army, but I'm not going to say that's like the height of cinematic excellence. I just really love it. So I've gone for Pan's Labyrinth as my kind of Guillermo film for this list. It's just a real beautiful, dark, magical realist kind of fable, and it kind of enchants, and it kind of puts you under a spell, and it's I don't think many filmmakers can marry like the outlandish, the uncanny with like the really kind of depressingly bleak as much as Guillermo del Toro. He loves that putting like a supernatural element into like a really dark period of like human history. In this case, back in the Spanish Civil War, and basically combining that with like almost like an Alice in Wonderland type tale, basically. And he's one of these filmmakers who is just up for doing everything as practically as you can. You don't really use CG unless you have to, unless you're extending something that's already there or kind of enhancing it. He loves his kind of elaborate kind of prosthetic makeup and animatronics and things like that. He loves his monsters, and they're very rarely the worst things in his films. There's always just an ordinary person who's basically like hell spat them out. In this case, the General Vidal in this, he's just so much worse than any other kind of creature that Ophelia encounters, including like the Pale Man, who's like one of the more terrifying Guillermo del Toro creations. But still, he's just a thing. He just likes eating things, but he doesn't, abuse like the local populace. He's not a fascist. I've always loved this. I found it magical ever since I saw it, and I think this was one of those where it's like he did get some awards recognition, but it's like this was like the point where people started to take him seriously, critically. He wasn't just a guy who kind of did like kind of weird creature movies and vampire movies, that he could actually do like proper kind of profound and kind of deep storytelling as well. So if not for this, you wouldn't have had like all the success since. I don't think, but it was kind of a sign fairly early on that it was the real deal.
Yeah, I love Pan's Labyrinth, and by the way, I recognize Doug Jones somehow, even though he's always in like a costume whenever I see him. So I was watching What We Do in the Shadows, and I was like, hey, that's the guy from the Fish movie. Shape of Water.
Yeah,
that's the guy from all of Del Toro's movies ever.
Yes.
Yeah. Pretty much.
For my number 6, I picked The Godfather. The Godfather 2 is better. I'll preface it with that. I know this is a best films list, so in theory, I should put The Godfather 2 over The Godfather 1. But we wouldn't have The Godfather 2 without The Godfather 1. It was so impactful. It was, incredibly high grossing. I can't remember if it was the highest grossing one of the year, but it just shattered box office expectations based on the kind of disaster it was behind the scenes. It won Best Picture, and then, of course, Best Actor for Brando, and just had a ton of nominations that year anyway. Francis Ford Coppola was like not the first choice to direct it, and he wanted to bring in Brando. He wanted to bring in Al Pacino. He was forced to work with James Caan, and as much as he could, he wanted to put his touches and his ideas along with Mario Puzo into the film of The Godfather. And there is a cut scene that I think redeems the film's romanticization of gangsters a little bit. It has Michael's wife converting to Catholicism, going to pray for his soul. It's not in the movie. I think it was included on like a VHS or some DVD copy that was released. But, you know, on the whole, it's not a perfect film in terms of the way that it handles its tragic protagonist of Michael Corleone, and his downfall is more framed as an ascension than a downfall. But you know, it really is a film about the corruption of, you know, people and family by American capitalism, trying to live the American dream, leaving your own ethos behind. In this particular film, the Italian sort of way of doing things, and the Italian way of doing things sort of becomes being mobsters rather than you know, the more family-based, more positive sort of things you would come up with. And I was choosing between this and Goodfellas, and I went with The Godfather. Just, you know, again, you wouldn't have Goodfellas without The Godfather. Scorsese was busy making Mean Streets and other movies before he made Goodfellas. So yeah, Godfather is an amazing movie. This is the one I've seen 15 to 20 times. I'll just sit and watch this. It's so good. So, yep, that is mine, and I love Brando. That's the end of that. Kieran.
Okay, we are halfway through. Let's see what we can do. This is going to be a 2-hour stream, but who cares? Yeah, so from a 3-hour movie to my next one, which is another short, about 30 minutes. Again, a film that nobody would expect to see in a top 10 film list of all time, because that's how I go, off kilter. Wallace and Gromit, The Wrong Trousers.
I thought you were going to say La Jetée.
I mean, La Jetée is an interesting one to throw in, but The Wrong Trousers, you know, it was the first win for Aardman. Again, it's the first animated film on my list. There is another one coming up. I thought about putting something like Ghost in the Shell on there, or Akira, but I just couldn't have the room. And those films, if anyone wants to know, prove that animation is not just for kids. I think possibly so does The Wrong Trousers, because it has one of the most terrifying villains ever created in the penguin or the chicken. If you want to know, it's like, as I've got in my thing, it's got humor, it's got heartbreak, there's suspense, there's a jewel heist in it, and possibly the greatest chase scene of all time in the biggest living room ever created. And it's all in 30 minutes. It's ridiculous. I will still hold that I think it is my favorite chase scene of all time. And the fact that each frame is so painstakingly done. It's just talent and skill and ridiculously well done. And it's the Wrong Trousers is like one of the, I think, the best things ever animated, ever put to screen. And yes, it's incredibly British, but it's on it. So The Wrong Trousers wasn't.
If you're going to say that The Wrong Trousers is some distance better than all the other films we've all suggested on all of our lists, I find it difficult to argue.
And Kieran, Shoot and Hope Pope, they say great shout out with The Wrong Trousers. So you have support.
Yes.
Woo!
That's great.
Oh, that's our one viewer.
Look, it's better than we've had before. So thank you, The Wrong Trousers. You know, I saw somewhere in a comment on some version that apparently Spielberg reckoned it was one of the greatest chase scenes ever. I have yet to find evidence for it, but I still believe it in my heart.
Yeah. Oh God, it's me, isn't it? Right, my number 5 is Casablanca.
That's another one that got
say it
left
again,
off
Sam.
mine.
I will say it again. Yeah, it's one of those films where it's like you wouldn't change anything in it, you know, out of fear of spoiling the magic, you know, somehow it just works. Everything about it just works just so well. You know, like a near perfect screenplay that amazingly was almost written on the job, basically, because they had various issues during filming. Again, it wasn't like smooth production or anything, you know, and various disagreements about the way the story was going to go and whether it was too kind of ambiguous or too depressing an ending, you know, and people wanted a bit more of an uplift, you know, especially considering it was made, you know, during the war, you know, about the war, you know, but no, I think it's, you know, it's kind of it's a combination of, you know, the performances, the classic kind of beauty look of the film, the, you know, the screenplay, kind of the general kind of rebellious nature of it. You know, it's got this real kind of sense of kind of standing up for what's right, you know, standing up to fascist bullies. And Michael Curtis, I think he's one of those who's a really versatile kind of director in like classic Hollywood, but I don't think he gets the recognition he deserves, you know, compared to like his other people who are working at the same time, you know, like John Huston, Howard Hawks, and John Ford. You know, he did a Robin Hood movie. He did he did Casablanca. He did a few horror films as well. He was. I don't think there was a genre he didn't try and kind of just excel in, really. But it's it's one of those that, yeah, again, just kind of draws me in every time, you know, and I'm never disappointed by it. You know, it's I think it's the reason that it's considered like a classic, you know, for most people you'd ask.
Nice. My next one is an incredibly popular film, Star Wars, or if you want to call it A New Hope, I guess you can say that.
Are you just going for A New Hope, or are you putting the trilogy as one?
Well, I don't call it A New Hope. I call it Star Wars because that is the name of the movie.
It's a bit like it's not Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Exactly. I call it what it is. I don't use stupid retroactive titles. They should have thought about titling it that before making sequels. So, I mean, what is there to say about it? Incredibly influential sci-fi, bringing in the mythical story elements from Carl Jung and that other dude, Kieran. What's his name?
Freud?
No, the Circle Hero's Journey guy.
Oh, Joseph Campbell.
Thank you, Joseph Campbell. Yep, I mean, just it's excellent storytelling. The characters are fun. The no-name actors, you know, outside of maybe Harrison Ford, and of course Alec Guinness. Oh yeah, but he's not part of the main gang. You know, it's really good character dynamics, and the special effects are what really push this to influential status. So Kieran, you talked about the short experimental films. Whenever George Lucas was making this, he went and raided the experimental filmmakers at Caltech and were like, hey guys, you're going to come work for me and make all my cameras and models and rotoscoping, and we're going to make the most technologically advanced movie ever. And whatever you have to say about Lucas as a director, he's obviously gone a bit downhill with the prequels, but he was still pushing the boundaries of technology. And I think that is the most important thing to take away from Star Wars. It's what it gave us as far as filmmaking tools and styles that continued to be used, you know, throughout the 80s and 90s until we finally had usable CGI.
And I think it did change kind of just franchises in general. Yes, we did have franchises before Star Wars, but it really, in terms of a blockbuster franchise, it was the first and probably will remain the biggest. Mine is slightly rivaling it, and I've slightly cheated by putting all three in one go.
You definitely cheated.
Yeah, if you put 3 movies, that's cheating.
They were all filmed together, so I will argue that. It's kind of cheating, but again, try and split them. Lord of the Rings trilogy, because it's one film. You just go. It's Lord of the Rings.
I can split them. Two Towers. If I'm picking one, Two Towers. That's my favourite Lord of the Rings film.
I'd go Fellowship.
Lord of the Rings. You pick a different one on a different day. You know, you put them in a certain order, and again, slightly cheating, but it's so like massively like in Western popular culture and everywhere. Obviously, Return of the King is technically, as much as we hate the Oscars, we also use them to prove our points when we can. The most successful film of the Oscar of all time, percentage-wise, with 11 wins. Between them, they've got like 18 wins. The cast is perfect. Most of the effects still hold up. The score, I think, is actually just edging out Star Wars for the best score of all time over all three. It's just like the miniatures, the amount of work and craft and effort it went into it. It's just the scale. Nothing will ever be done like that ever again. I don't feel. Marvel won't do it. And when you realize that each film was like $80 million. Okay, there's inflation and stuff as well, but altogether was like 200 mil. The newest Mission Impossible was 280 mil. Like a lot of the Marvel films are coming up on 200 mil. I can't remember half the new Marvel movies. Like it's just pointless. And yet Lord of the Rings, like, let's be honest, every line is a meme at this point. It's so ingrained that, no, it could have been the most massive failure of all cinematic history. And yet it's one of the biggest successes, and nothing will ever, I don't think, top that.
Yeah, they saved that for The Hobbit, the massive failure. Also, Greg agrees Two Towers.
I know. You do realize Greg is actually me, right? It's agreeing with everything. You got to agree to the next lot as well.
Sam, what is your cheating number 4?
I haven't cheated. My number 4 is one movie only, and that's Jaws. I had to,
which is hidden behind your head.
Yes, I had to have a Spielberg film, and yeah, Jaws was again is the again. If I'm going like purely kind of what's affecting me over the years, I'm probably more affectionate towards Jurassic Park because that was my first big trip to the cinema, and I've always kind of had a real connection to it. But Jaws, I would say, is probably a more impactful film overall. I think in terms of the industry and the way it changed cinema.
Yeah, the first blockbuster.
Well, yeah, it was one of the films that helped create the idea of the summer blockbuster and kind of turn that into like something the studios put money into every year,
and
basically.
The whole idea of the merchandising of it, even before it came out, like it changed things on an industry level, not just culturally.
Yeah, but again, it's like a screenplay. It's like it's no nonsense, It's not an ounce of fat on it. Just gets on with it, and basically, it's like, first half of like all the inciting incidents, all the attacks and the setup, and then the second half is basically 3 guys on a boat, on a quest, but really just spending time with each other and talking and arguing and taking the piss out of each other. It's and happy accidents like the fact that like Robert Shaw and Richard Dreyfuss really didn't get on. So of course their characters, they've got like a very believable conflict between them, from different worlds and different ways of doing things and stuff, and that really comes through. Obviously, famously troubled production and happy accidents like the big animatronic shark not working as soon as it hit salt water, so they couldn't show it that much. So which again is better because what you don't see, the art of suggestion is much more terrifying than seeing this big floppy rubber shark head, just coming out the water. Obviously, it's got a lot to answer for, years since, about how it's demonized sharks in the eyes of the world, turned them into literal monsters. And Peter Benchley, the author and who adapted his own book for this, has gotten a record and really regrets this. And now, since he passed away, I think his widow is basically heads up a charity, to kind of help sharks these days. They're trying to redress the balance, but I think Spielberg said a similar thing. He probably wouldn't do things the way he did if he was doing it back again. But yeah, it's a really, really effective little thriller, and it's just a really, really good time in movies.
And if anyone wants more on the impact of Jaws, then go check out Sharksploitation on Shudder. which is all about that stuff. But there's a lot on Jaws and quite a few interviews with Wendy Benchley about the kind of
Yeah.
demonization of sharks after that. And my review of that is on the Film Magazine, so go find it. Not to plug my own stuff on Sam's segment, but
Well, my number 4, we've kind of discussed it a little bit. The Shining. I think it is my favorite horror film, which is why it edged out Psycho. So we're in the era of horror jump scares. That's the only way that they could possibly think of creating scares for an audience. But The Shining is antithetical to that. Like, I guess maybe you could argue that some of the stuff that happens is jump scare-esque or jump scare adjacent, but mainly there's a sense of dread. There's a sense of anxiety amongst the characters, and that you end up feeling yourself. It's Kieran, you like to talk about psychological horror is how critics describe good horror, but like it is psychological horror. It's not just, oh man, oh, I heard a scary sound, oh, and it made me jump. That's like the cheapest form of scare. When you can really put a sense of dread into your audience, that's when you've done good, scary filmmaking. There are plenty of iconic images. Jack Nicholson, obviously, a great performance, and it is a shame what was going on behind the scenes as far as the abuse that Kubrick or mistreatment. I don't know if it was quite abuse, but his mistreatment of God, what is her name?
Shelley Duvall.
Thank you, Shelley Duvall. I'm terrible at remembering names, but like she's so good in that movie, and here's Johnny, it's iconic for him looking through the door, but I think her reaction to the axe coming through is just as powerful and unfortunately overlooked. Because you can't have that scene without her.
No, I mean, never have hotel corridors been more terrifying, than this film.
Sam, show us your phone screen again. You can get that at the Film Magazine Redbubble store.
Yeah. Oh, look, it's the Shining. Beautiful. And admittedly now in any horror movie where there's like a hallway and they've got it, what centrally framed 1-point perspective, slightly pushing it. It's like, oh look, Shining shot next. Somebody's been to the Kubrick School of Horror Filmmaking. And the good thing about The Shining is there's literally like almost all of like the scary scenes are pretty much in broad daylight. There's the bit with the maze, and there's that one shot of the kind of original lounge area of the skeletons. That's about it. For dark scenes, everything else is like brightly lit, which is completely the opposite way. And again, it was a toss-up for me between 2001 and The Shining. 2001 just picked it, so Shining being on there is never going to be an argument. Yeah. Anyway, final 3. Well, for Sam at least, the others chronologically. And I'm really annoying Jacob here because I've got Spirited Away.
that doesn't annoy me. I acknowledge that it's a good movie and that what's his name is an incredible director and animation pioneer. I just don't like the films. Yeah.
Yeah. Spirited Away. It's weird because I did this one at university as well. An essay on this and Corpse Bride for Themes of the World. So I did quite a lot of research into it. And yes, there are calls for Howl's Moving Castle or Totoro, especially Totoro in Japan, who's literally kind of their equivalent of Mickey Mouse. Kids now grow up with Totoro. But Spirited Away, I think, is Ghibli's crowning kind of achievement. Obviously, the only anime film to win the Oscar. The only non-American or kind of non-English language one to win it. But he then didn't go and collect the Oscar for because he didn't want to go to a country that's currently bombing Iraq, and a lot of that is in Miyazaki's kind of past with his father, who was involved with the Japanese war effort and guilt and that. But on the other thing, it's absolutely beautifully animated film. It's not just a kids' film. Everyone can get into it. There's stuff for everyone, and there's the one of the most beautiful main themes ever with Joe Hisaishi's One Summer's Day. That piano melody is gorgeous, and it's all in there, and it's just a wonderful, just taking you away somewhere. A bit like Sam, I guess, for Pan's Labyrinth.
Yeah.
There's monsters in here, and they're not quite rip your face off. They just give you a
Yeah.
load of gold.
Yeah, I mean, there's a similar kind of Alice in Wonderland-esque kind of link, with
Yeah.
Miyazaki and Del Toro. I think they're obsessed with those kind of themes, like a dream world, children can escape to, when their
Yeah.
real life is a bit too distressing.
And so and also again, this is the first time since on my list since the first one that I wanted to deliberately move away from English language films and make sure I had a couple on here. There's some more on here, but
Yeah,
just making sure I had a non-English language animation in
yeah,
there, just to
yeah.
give a bit of breadth and variety to my list.
Yeah, to be honest, it really did kill me not to have a Studio Ghibli on my list. It was just edged out, just because I couldn't really fit in like just like a straight superhero movie in my list. So I thought I'll combine it with animation. I'll have Spiderverse in there, but yeah, it could have very easily. My number 10 could have very easily have been House Moving Castle or Tale of Princess Kaguya or Grave of the Fireflies. But
Grave of the Fireflies, the happiest movie ever created.
yeah, didn't quite make it. My number 3, going over to France. So I've, for me, a much more interesting director of the French New Wave than Godard was Agnes Varda, and I've gone for one of her
Technically,
films
she's
from
left bank, and there is a distinction, but carry on.
Ooh. So yeah, I've gone for one of her films from the 80s, Vagabond, which is it's a very kind of naturalistic. I mean, that's generally Varda's kind of style. It's only one step removed from documentary. Really, she uses like non-professional actors, and she'll just go around like these rural communities, like spending time with people and filming them, doing their everyday lives. But yeah, she creates like a protagonist in this, a teenage drifter who's basically just wandering around and just surviving, living hand to mouth and sleeping rough, and just follows her on a journey, and obviously she encounters like real people on the way, throughout France, and yeah, it's just. Vaz always got this innate kind of sympathy for for like the I don't know, kind of the underclass, anyone who's kind of going through kind of hard times is kind of is in poverty, and I think she's got this innate sympathy for them, and she wants to give them a voice, and this is like a real kind of like social realist, kind of almost like fable, really, and it's really powerful and stays with you. Um, and
Yeah.
yes,
Just want to say
sorry.
congratulations, Sam. We're at film 23 of this discussion. We finally have a female director.
Yeah, I kind of felt that was, that was almost
Yes!
like we'd be asked, yeah, people quite rightly ask us questions if there was no representation on any of our lists. But yeah, I mean, there was some other kind of films directed by women that again very narrowly missed out on my choice. I mean, like Kaya Barnard, works in Bradford, where I'm based. She's did The Selfish Giant, which is one of my favourites. Again, kind of low key, kind of social realist kind of films. So that was very close. I could have had a Chloe Zhao film on here. I mean, I almost think Chloe Zhao is almost like the modern kind of success to someone like Agnes Varda. But yeah, I do find it's just a very powerful, like low key kind of story. I think more people should see it. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Mm. it caught the zeitgeist, didn't it? I think that's kind of why it's made such a splash. Yeah.
my
Technical difficulties.
my
hooray!
microphone has been off, so all of that it was just lost. And I had to go feed my dog. That's where I went. In a similar vein to what you couldn't hear me saying just now, Do the Right Thing from Spike Lee. So if you watched it in, let's say, 2020 in America, you might go, wow, how did Spike Lee predict the future? That there's police violence against black. Oh no, that's because Spike Lee is acknowledging there's been police violence against black people as long as America has existed. It's a fight that white America really was not conscious of until 15, 16, maybe even 2020. That was a tough time to be on social media and seeing people go, oh man, the cops beat people. I've never heard of this before. Do the Right Thing. It's, Spike Lee introducing his sort of unique take on cinema. It's taking place in his neighborhood on one hot day, and it's discussing racial tensions within that neighborhood of Brooklyn that he is from, and it brings his personality to it, where it's very forceful, very direct, unapologetic, but there's so much empathy for everybody in the story. And even it's like there's a racist pizza cooking character, and Spike Lee still treats him the same way that he treats other characters, and he shows everybody's biases, but the main focus is on the police brutality and the way that the neighborhood is treated. And that was an era specifically in New York where they were trying to get tough on crime with broken windows, policing, and of course it ends with a shooting and a riot. And that is incredibly reminiscent of both things that are actually happening and debates that are still happening in U.S. culture. And that's a real shame. We could have learned from just watching this movie. But Spike Lee, fortunately, has been able to go on, continue making films that incorporate documentary footage and real-life stories. And I think what he has done for American cinema and young American filmmakers of any race, any creed, walk of life, he's just had such a big impact. And I love Spike Lee. I think that's his best movie.
Agreed.
Yep.
Karen?
Speaking of non kind of filmmakers that aren't white straight, I've got one from another country now. It's fairly recent now. We've moved to 2019. I've got Parasite with Bong Joon-ho, and I know people are going to go, memories of murder, blah, 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 but
I know I am.
It's my list, and I will say Parasite, and it's all of his decades, everything he's got, and he put it into a film which, in my opinion, is bordering on flawless. You watch Parasite, and there's just not much. You look at it and go, I don't know what you could physically do to make it better. Every shot is crafted, every moment works. There's even the subtle things of kind of having the main house be very high up geographically, and the main family being low down in one of these subterranean houses, for getting this kind of hierarchical system up. And it's every genre in the world is in there. It's funny, there's romance in there, there's thriller, there's moments of straight up horror, let's be fair. And it's just one of those, you watch it with the biggest smile on your face ever, and it may be really metaphorical. Sorry, so metaphorical, I believe is the phrase. But at the same time, it's just so damn good that you watch it. And yes, again, we make fun of the Oscars when it doesn't suit our purpose, but very rightly, it won Best Picture, and so far, still to this date, is the only non-English language film to win Best Picture in nearly 100 attempts. And if nothing else, starting to break down that barrier should be applauded.
I did a piece for last Oscar season, which was ranking all the non-English language Best Picture nominees over the years,
Yeah.
and all of
There's not many.
Oscar history. There's 14 off the top of my head, I seem to remember. So it's
Yeah.
just out of all those hundreds and hundreds of films, only 14 films not in English were deemed worthy of standing with the other.
Well, if you've got it in
best
the
films of the year,
you've got the modern thing where you give 10 nomination because it used to be 5. If you take it with the 10, you can't fill 2 years worth.
Yeah.
So yeah, if nothing else for that, and to be honest, everyone's going to go, oh, it's going to change. I don't think it'll change. There won't be another one for another 20, 30 years, because that's just the way the culture is for the Academy. But I reckon it'll. If for nothing else, Bong Joon-ho deserves the credit for that and for being just a ridiculously good movie.
Agreed.
Sam?
My number 2, I think it's the third oldest film on my list. Looking back, yeah. So, 1946, it's Powell and Pressburger's A Matter of Life and Death. My dad introduced me to Powell and Pressburger. I think that they're some of his kind of favorite directors, some of his favorite films, kind of from there. He really likes Life and Death of Colonel Blimp and the Red Shoes. But they were like a British institution. I mean, well, one of them was Hungarian, but naturalized British. They're a bit like the Coen brothers of the day. They're both usually one was credited as with Powell, usually credited with the directing, and Pressburger was credited with producing, and both kind of co-wrote. But really, they both did everything. They were kind of that they were just this great kind of film partnership, kind of almost met by chance. Very different stage of their career. I think Pressburger was a journalist, and Powell was kind of working his way up the British film industry. But yeah, they just it creates this like wonderful kind of story of like of a pilot in World War II kind of stuck in purgatory, and his soul is saved by the power of love, which is just lovely, isn't it? Lovely story.
Too bad that song didn't
but
exist yet.
Yeah, it's one of those terribly British kind of films. Very kind of British kind of attitude to life. Kind of stiff upper lip and everything, but kind of a really kind of witty kind of sense of humor, and some really inventive visuals. How they visualize heaven and everything in between, and the use of kind of vivid technicolor, for the living world, and this kind of cold monochrome for the afterlife is really clever, and it's just one of those that I think is it is well regarded, but it's possibly not as remembered as it should be. By a lot of people today. I think it kind of almost needs a bit of a resurgence. I think that their work does in general. I think it's just very kind of powerful and kind of humanistic kind of story, and it's really entertaining too. It's it's funny. It's kind of moving. It's heartbreaking, and ends in this big kind of courtroom battle in heaven, where this doctor's got to argue to save Peter, the main character's life, and he's arguing against like all these figures from history who are kind of on the prosecution bench. But yeah, I really rate it as kind of as a fantasy film, as a romance. There's a bit of time travel in there as well. It's like time doesn't really behave how it normally does, and especially for a film from the 40s, that's really interesting. So that was very close off my list. It's just been edged out by my number 1, which is probably my favorite film of all time. So.
Yeah, when I took international cinema, Powell and Pressburger and kitchen sink films and silent Hitchcock were all we learned about British cinema.
Yeah, to be honest, that's a pretty good starting point. But yeah, there's a lot more there.
I think that's all that exists.
Yep.
My number 2.
All we've got now for British cinema, it must be said, is World War II dramas. We've got anything to do with a royal family in some way through history, and then the only other films are made for about 10 quid.
Hey, we also had a World War I drama. All right.
I'm sorry. And we also have things like James Bond, but you guys fund them.
So my next one, There Will Be Blood. I love There Will Be Blood. It is an incredible Daniel Day-Lewis performance playing the morally corrupt Daniel Plainview, and the contrast between him and the holy man played by Paul Dano. I think his name's like Eli Sunday, something like that. Very, very preachery sounding. This is another one where it's about a transition period in America, moving out west, and the corruption of the land, corruption of the people, and how the American dream and the goals of capitalistic greed are undermining the human condition. But it's told on such an epic scale. Like, I think I said that it's shot like a John Ford movie or like a David Lean movie. Like, it's just massive. The shots of like the oil erupting out of the ground, and then the oil fires where, you know, hell is just literally coming straight out of the ground. It's so good. It's captivating. Every scene, every performance. And who does not love quoting, "I drink your milkshake"? I would not expect Paul Thomas Anderson to have iconic lines. Maybe iconic large penises? Maybe. Lines, wouldn't have thought of that for him. But yeah, this is his magnum opus. I think he is up there for best 21st century filmmakers. And it's got the best actor, arguably, of the 21st century in one of his best roles. So,
yeah. I do love that. Like the first 10 minutes is just Daniel Day-Lewis digging a hole in silence. You know, that's the way to begin your movie.
Yep.
It's not that far off 2001.
I agree. It's definitely his best film.
Yeah.
All
and
right.
then finally, I come to the end, and I finally have a female director, and I've kind of arced it back all the way around. I started in France and I end in France, and my final film is Portrait of a Lady on Fire from 2019, same year. And the reason I've got this on here, for the absolute horror nerd that I am, and this is a modern French queer historical romance thing, being one of the greatest films ever. And it's like, what the hell is that? But I remember watching it and being sat there and just going, I can't find a single thing wrong with this. And then getting about 2/3 of the way through and going, I still haven't found a single frame that feels incorrect. And by the very end of it, the last shot, I'm like, you need to end this about now. And about 2 seconds later, the film cut off and the credits start. It was so, like, I was in that. And it's one of those ones where I watch it and I go, it may not be kind of, you know, my favorite or anything like that. I don't think it's probably in like my top 15 films. It might be, but it's probably not in my top 10 at the very least, like favorite films. But I just remember watching it going, I have not seen recently as flawless in terms of sheer craft of filmmaking as in Portrait of a Lady on Fire. And it's just from that moment of going, there is just nothing that they could have done, you know, with the material given that could have made this any better. So just for the sheer flawlessness of what I watched and witnessed, it's there, and I will stand by that till the day I die.
Yeah, it's a great movie where kind of silences speak volumes. You know, it's like it's about it's stuff that isn't said that's far more kind of impactful than what they actually do. You know, say, you know, kind of how they physically display their emotions. It's the things they can't say and the things you know, that kind of keep them apart that has the real kind of impacts.
Yeah, and it doesn't have like the traditional Hollywood ending. You know, it's just, it does what it does, and it does it perfectly, and it gets out of there, and just,
yeah, it's a great movie, and if I had remembered it, I mean, it might have made my list, but I think it's still a little too recent for me. But I do love it, and like you talked about, the sort of display of queer romance through time. Like, gay people always existed. Non-straight people, or not solely into the opposite gender. So
I was going to say, yeah, people that weren't heterosexual didn't just suddenly appear about 80 years ago.
yeah, I remember Oliver Stone's Alexander getting a lot of flack here in the U.S. for its making him gay when I mean he was probably gay or bi or something like that.
It's just like, do you know anything about the Romans?
With Jared Leto.
Yeah, I think most Greeks especially they use like same-sex relationship. That was like their recreation, wasn't it? It's like if you're around the guy for pleasure, and then you get together with a woman for procreation,
Yeah. So that's my 10.
So Sam, your number one is your number one. So let's hear it.
Yeah. So it's Bong Joon-ho's Memories of Murder from 2003. Not to be that guy, but I liked Bong Joon-ho before it was cool to like Bong Joon-ho. You see, I was lucky enough to be shown this film at university, and on the back of that, I ended up doing my dissertation on his films.
When you had about 2.
Yes. Yeah, so I did it on the 3. So Memories of Murder, The Host, and Mother. And that dissertation was in 2012. So yeah, not long before he was kind of a well recognized director.
And he got 4 then, because Barking Dogs Don't Bite as well.
Yes, he's done Barking Dogs. Yeah, and then obviously it was
Snowpiercer, then Okja, and then
Parasite. So this is like almost a decade before Parasite. He dramatizes like countries' historical trauma and kind of the social upheaval in like a really dark chapter in their history. But he just did something that kind of not many people do, and it takes a real delicate touch to pull off. In that he finds humor in like the most dark, kind of upsetting kind of situations. It's like it's like police like brutality and torture and horrible interrogations, but the police are just so inept and so inconsistent with their questioning that it's still funny. It's like they break off like a scene of horrible torture of this witness that they're trying to. They know he's not done the crime, but they're trying to get him to admit it, just to, just so they can. They've got a success put on the books, But they break off midway through, like kicking the crap out of this guy, and to watch like a soap opera with him on TV. They all just take a break or sit down, have some noodles, watch a soap, and then get back to the torture. I mean, this was obviously a true crime. It's like a real kind of serial killer. It was only recently in the last couple of years been this crime been solved. They found out who it was. So obviously they left the real perpetrator in the film. The way they depict the murders, the rapes and the murders, they're very ambiguous about like who it is. You never really get a good look of the perpetrator, and there's several different suspects of the characters we see in the film. So in that way, a bit like David Finch did with the Zodiac, a few years later, and I think he's acknowledged like the influence this had on him. I mean, there's a lightness of touch to it, and I think it's really bold and kind of brave to kind of tell this kind of such a personal story, to your kind of countries like national identity in this way, and kind of acknowledge that like there were terrible times, but there were moments that were kind of ridiculous in their kind of extremity as well, and that acknowledge that there's humor in like the kind of darkest situations. And I think this is just an early sign that he is again for me the best director of the 21st century. I mean, yes, Paul Thomas Anderson is up there, but for me, Bong Joon-ho, I think is it for me. And I think this was an early sign that he was going to bring everything together, and sooner or later he would time it right. Where again, it's like capturing the zeitgeist. Enough critics would notice it, enough audiences would take him to their hearts, and obviously it ends up with Parasite being like his success story. So I'm sure whatever he does next will be just as interesting and just as impactful.
Yep. All right. Well, I guess mine is probably more similar to Kieran's here. I went with Moonlight from Barry Jenkins. Unfortunately, it will always be best remembered for losing to La La Land at the Oscars, and then going back to Bonnie and Clyde, Faye Dunaway and what's his name, Warren
Warren.
Beatty, going, oh whoops, they handed us the wrong envelope. I think they had the one for Emma Stone is the one that they got. So it wasn't their fault. They were just reading what was handed to them. But
Yeah.
Moonlight it's a beautiful story. Like it's told in 3 parts where Chiron, he's a kid, and he has this, influence in his life. He's kind of bullied, and he has a really good friend that, he has positive feelings for. Those may change throughout the story, from positive into romantic. But, he sees this example of like a kind, sort of benevolent gangster. I think his name's Juan. And I also think he's played by, Mahershala Ali. So,
Yes.
incredible actor. But really what I remember, I don't remember him from Moonlight as much as I remember Chiron. Like, those 3 actors are really good across all 3 states of life. And Jenkins does a really good job sort of visually separating each area where the youth has sort of a golden, nostalgic hue to it. And then it's a bit more desaturated whenever he is a teenager. And again, kind of being bullied, being an outsider, not feeling like he fits in. And of course, there's the queer element of that, and also the not being a cool guy within black culture. That's another element of it. So Jenkins is really pulling together those 2 sort of outsider elements for the character. And finally, whenever he's an adult, he has adopted that Juan persona. He's become, have y'all seen the movie Get Hard with Will Ferrell and Kevin Hart? It's basically that.
It's got Will Ferrell in it. I'm not going to watch it.
Yeah, not to compare this to Get Hard, because they're nowhere near the same, anything. They're not in the same planet, but he becomes that gangster figure, and he's going by Black now, and he's really adopted this persona, and he meets his friend from childhood and is able to reconnect. And so visually we get the connection between childhood and adulthood, and the little kid not little kid, now a grown man, realizes that this is who I am. He becomes a bit more accepting of himself.
But the little kid inside him realizes that as well. You see.
Yes, you're right. Because really, that's where it all starts. The unconscious feelings of childhood. But I think the most important thing is, like, it's the year before had been the Oscars So White campaign. And, this did, in a sense, feel like an intentional way for the Academy to say, no, we're not racist. But it still does that, whether or not it was done in good faith or done because that's what we have to do. It really kind of showed a shift, hopefully, in the Academy towards stories that are sort of untold. Like Dee Reese's Pariah is another really good movie like this. It came out before it, about a lesbian girl. And like, this is I would say the first real mainstream foray into queer cinema, into stories that are not quite in the mainstream. And Kieran, you were talking about the universality of the human experience in Blade Runner. I mean, this has it too, and it's about you don't have to be a gay black kid to really feel what Chiron is feeling, what he went through in his life. It's something that can appeal to anybody, and it's brilliant, and it is as recent as I was willing to go with a best film, because I think its impact can still be felt. Barry Jenkins has made one film since then. I don't know if he's made another one, but yeah, it's really good. I love that movie, and it leaves out the problematic elements of Call Me by Your Name, which I also love.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also just for me personally, that era of Oscar cinema, I really enjoyed watching those from like 15 to 17, 18, somewhere in there when I was really into it.
Pre-Green Book.
Yeah, pre-Green Book.
Yeah.
All right.
And then some of the ones after that have been pretty decent as well. I was just coming to the end of this, looking and going, nobody's got the same film as anyone else. And in fact, we don't have, all three of us, any same directors either.
No, we do. We have same directors.
Yeah, but not all three of us.
Oh, not all three of us.
Oh,
No.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like
So we've got Kubrick crossover, we've got Bong Joon-ho crossover, we've got Hitchcock.
we've got a Hitchcock. Yeah. But that's about it.
Yeah. How about that? What interesting and diverse list. So
I was going to say, yeah.
Although mine did
And
not
I'd
have
like
any
to-
women.
And I think we all have a French film. Sam, was one of yours French?
yes. Yes,
Yes.
Vagabond, yep.
There you go. So we've all gone to France as well. So I think that's aside from like the generic kind of UK and US cinema, that's the nearest to things we can get. We can go back to where it all started.
Yeah, I mean, France is probably the most important film country in the world, undoubtedly.
Well, without it, we would have no cinema as we know it.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, well, guys, do we have any final thoughts? Anything to say before we do our promo?
Yeah, I'm sorry to anyone listening back to this or watch the entire thing for going on so long.
Well,
Our
well,
usuals will not be this long.
Yeah, we'll try and make it maybe half this length normally.
Maybe.
Yeah,
if
especially
if we can.
especially because it's 10 o'clock there. So,
Yeah.
all right, well, guys, this has been a great show. If people want to find more of what you write and say, where can people find you online?
You can find me at SSP Thinks Film and at the Film Magazine. Well, the whole team will have a similar list to this. Kieran's still having technical difficulties.
I tried.
Yes.
I stayed to the end and still nothing.
Yes. So all of our contributors at the Film Magazine will have a top 10 list going up over the next few days. So come and check us out, see what we're about, and kind of what makes us tick and what films we love. And we'd appreciate any and all feedback you might want to give us.
Yeah, and I am K Judgmental across the various places on the web. If you want to find me or not, hopefully not stalkers.
That's why he's hiding his face.
Yeah. This is obviously the reason why. You know what I need? I either need to move where I'm streaming from, or I need to get a little picture of me just there.
Yeah.
Maybe just Jack Nicholson laughing his head off in The Shining.
We can add profile pictures for this. I forgot.
Ooh, we'll do that for the next time. Yeah.
Next time.
I don't know what the most recent thing I have up on the Film Magazine was. I think it was A Haunting in Venice, possibly Elevator Game. And then coming up over the next few weeks, I will be doing various horror-related stuff because I finally get into my wheelhouse. Horror is where I belong. So I'll be eventually getting the Jekyll and Hyde movie, the Jekyll, the new Hammer movie coming out.
The new Exorcist.
Yeah, I'll be getting The Exorcist, and I'll be doing bits and pieces over the time, including, I think, possibly my ranking of all the Children of the Corn movies will be coming out. Hopefully, possibly, potentially. I don't know if I still got it. I ranked them, at least. I suffered through them all, so you don't have to. I literally am film Jesus in this sense. Horror movie Jesus. I suffer for their sins cinematically. So, yeah. Okay, judgmental.
Yeah, and you can find me at Jacob Film Guy. Obviously, my top 10 list will be my most recent thing that will be coming out this week. But in October, while other people are doing horror, I will be focusing on Martin Scorsese because that is my wheelhouse. Apparently, Italian-American gangster. I don't know what...
Scorsese and Coppola, after that, you have nothing.
I don't know what Killers of the Flower Moon is about. I'm saving myself. I've not watched any trailers. I've watched no promo because I don't care. I'm going to go in with fresh eyes and watch a new Scorsese film that isn't Silence. So
People go and murder. It's like a trip to the moon, only there's flowers.
there you go. Yeah, and then, like we said, go read all of our contributors' top 10 lists. We have a lot of they're not new anymore, but sort of new team members that you can really get to know their personality through their stuff. And of course, I don't have it in this video, but I will next time. Our links for the TFM PayPal, or if you want to buy stuff from us, we have a Redbubble store. So
Buy the swag.
yeah, you can get a phone case like Sam's. So.
And we should also mention what we're planning to do next week in case you want to drop any questions or anything like that beforehand.
What is it?
I think we're looking at movie flops. What makes a flop? Is it just critical? Is it just financial?
Yeah.
Does it change over time?
Yeah.
And those kind of things. So
Yeah.
we're all gonna...
So Greg or anyone else who wants to watch our show, have a think about if there's anything you want us to or talk about.
Yes, Greg, let us know.
Drop us a tweet. I refuse to call it an X. Drop us a tweet or something like that if you follow us on social medias. We will get our social medias back up and running properly. But yeah, movie flops, and we'll all have one, so we may cover what you're thinking of, or it may be something else. And that is our intention in a week's time.
All right, so that is it. Thank you for watching or listening, and goodbye.
Goodbye.
Adios.